What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the 1-0 podcast. My name is Avery Hill. I'm with Lyle Allenstein and Will Horseman. This week, we're going to recap last week's matchup with Nevada. We'll talk a little bit of FIU, and we'll talk about some checks versus stripes. Guys, to start, James Franklin had a lot to say about last week's matchup, some of the things he liked, some of the things he really didn't like. What kind of stood out to you guys the most?
Yeah, I want to start with the fact that he, after the game against Nevada, chopped it up with his family and friends in his house for 13 minutes, then went down to the basement in his man cave where he did not frame the preseason rankings. And he just, watched some football on his boxers. Sorry for that visual, everybody. He apologized for giving it to us on Monday, but that's what I took away. But in all seriousness, there wasn't a whole lot for James Franklin to complain about this week. Pretty complete game in that victory over the Wolfpack. He touched on it post-game. They want to clean up some of those red zone opportunities we heard from a couple people this week. It was kind of just about executing, getting those goal line situations. It is a positive that Ryan Barker went 4 for 4 on those field goals. So there's that. So I think just converting on the red zone, and then later in this week we kind of heard from Marcus Higgins and then James Franklin again on Wednesday, just about amplifying that passing attack a little bit, just in terms of explosive plays. Nevada kind of kept the wideouts in front of them, gave them some softer, blanketed coverage, but if you got to take what you're going to get, right? But, you can't really complain about how the passing attack is if you're a Penn State fan, because when you look at, these past couple of years, all the talk's been about those wide receivers. I know you guys hit on this post-game, but Kyron Hudson and Trevor Pena looked the part. Both went combining for 13 catches, over 100 yards. Had that touchdown, 31 yards from Kyron Hudson. Waving for Drew Aller in the back of that end zone, wide open. So you've got some things you could nitpick at, right? That's kind of what this non-conference schedule is going to be for the Nittany Lions against these inferior opponents. But, clean game. James, he's been jokes kind of these past couple of weeks because, he knows what he's got coming out of this camp going into the season. It's going to get serious in a few weeks. But right now, just a few things they got to clean up.
Yeah, the separation the receivers got this past weekend was almost completely different than what we've seen out of Penn State receivers in recent years. And it's kind of finally they've got Drew Aller, some good playmaking wide receivers who he could rely on once the schedule obviously gets tougher as the season goes on. I mean, these first 3 games aren't much of a test. It could be like all smoke and mirror. Maybe once they go up against an actual opponent, maybe the wide receivers don't do as well, but they really did flash a lot of potential. So when they go up against like Oregon, Ohio State, they could finally have like an actual production out of that group. But other than the receivers, Zariah Fisher and Zion Tracy obviously both set to return this week. I think that's important for them because I feel like with these like very easy non-conference games, obviously you want to look like you're a competent team, but it's like just staying healthy is probably one of the more important aspects, as obviously they're going to have a bye week before Oregon, but obviously they're going to want like their best players out there on the field for the Oregon game. But yeah, it's with Zariah Fisher and Zion Tracy set to return. I think that's probably the best news this week for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going off what both of you guys said, I think it is important, in these non-conference games, the 2 focuses is one figuring out what do we not do well at, because if you're not able to, let's talk about the run game, if you're not able to run the ball on Nevada, like, who can you run the ball on? Like, that's something. And then also just the fact that players staying healthy, because you're playing against, let's be honest, nobody. You're playing against teams that you're going to beat by 40 points. The spread for all 3 weeks will be at least 40 points. I won't be shocked if next week is 55 or more points because, it is an FCS squad. Like, so either way, there is, no reason for obviously you to. You're going to struggle. You're going to have your moments. There's going to be, again, you talk about the run game. You're going to nitpick those moments, but that is what the first week is about, and you got to see that. It is the first week of play. I think the most interesting thing for Penn State, like looking back at last season, was how does Penn State start out? Because as we talked about last week, there were a couple of slow starts. There were times where the Nittany Lions kind of let up going into halftime, things like that, had their errors. We wanted to see how does that change. We wanted to see kind of how does Penn State really work from that, and I think that'll be something that we'll continue to see through the weeks. I think a good point you touched on was the running game as well. You look at Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, who I don't think there's really an argument for being the best running back duo in the country, and those guys were limited. Neither of those guys touched over 100 yards. If you look at the yards per carry category, one they combined for about 16 carries. But if you look at the yards per carry category, obviously Katron Allen's at the top with 5.4. I think Nick Singleton was around 3, maybe 3.9, 3.8, something around there. But as you saw in the game, I mean, they just really struggled to really get down the field. I mean, it was mostly, I would say, blocking isn't a thing. And I think something that I've kind of noticed is it probably has a lot to do with the fact that Penn State is rotating in so many guys, which they would probably be doing anyway, even if they didn't have 7 guys who were like starters. They would probably be doing that anyway in these first 3 games. They're not really playing much of anybody. But, getting that communication going, making those different plays, things like that, those are all important. I mean, I think that was kind of one of the biggest things I saw, from the game that they, kind of worked on. And, Donko said, like, we really want to get this together. That was something they sat down and like, okay, like, that was not the standard. So, I mean, I think that's something that's, very important to kind of look at going forward.
Yeah, I mean, as a Penn State, like if you're a Penn State fan, like criticizing the run game, I think is at this point is ridiculous, right? Because you had all this talk about justifying the production from the wide receivers a couple of years, how it's calling for Marcus Hagan's job. Oh, like why are some of these guys still in the field? Why have they not performed? And you finally got that on Saturday. Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena looked the part, and then all of a sudden it's just like flipping the script, and you're going to go target the 2 running backs that have started are on their 4th year starting. Both are coming off seasons where they both went over 1,000 yards and can break Evan Royster's program rushing record. Like, come on, they'll figure it out, right? It's like you watch 7 offensive linemen that are all talented and interview as starters. 2, like you just said, probably the best running back duo in the country. You can make an argument for, I don't know, I'd say Notre Dame, but Jeremiah Love got bottled up, and Jaywan Sider, did not really use him the right way. But they're going to figure it out. Like, Katron talked this week. He's like, they just got to put it all together. It's just, it's the first game of the season, right? I think if they had played a better caliber opponent, they would have come out sharper. Maybe that game plan's a little different. But I wouldn't be concerned. But while we're on the topic of the run game, Cam Wallace, making his return from injury, I thought he looked very good. I know that RB3 competition is up for grabs. Corey Smith and him had the same amount of total touches. Cam Wallace had that highlight reel hurdle. Obviously, you talked. He wearing that number 26 reminded everyone of that Saquon Barkley with that jersey on. But I think he looked really good. I think we heard from a couple guys this week talking about him like coming back from injury, learning that. I remember he got carted off last year against Kent State. We saw him on the sideline in a wheelchair at times. Like that was a pretty significant injury. Andrew Rapplier, another guy who obviously had a front row seat at watching that with his long-term injury, was on Zoom this week just talking about. He said that Cam Wallace was basically, the quote was, in a damn near nursing home, right? Like, and to come back to showcase that athleticism on your second touch, like I think that shows a lot. Now this RB3 competition is still out for grabs. Corey Smith's done some nice things. Obviously, he had the same amount of touches. He did some nice things last year. We saw Quentin Martin didn't play this past week, but James Franklin clarified on Monday that he was, been banged up during camp and was just cleared to go. But I think Cam Wallace is the front runner for that RB3 spot. Obviously, once that run game gets going with Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, he's not really going to see the field that much, bearing anything drastic. But that was another thing I want to take away from this one.
Yeah, I mean, when you kind of look at that with Cam Wallace, I think the biggest thing that I noticed is, even earlier today, everyone has kind of been with him on that journey. We don't get too much injury information, obviously. We don't know exactly what happened. We knew, obviously, he was out for the season, things like that. It was long-term at the time, but we knew essentially within a few weeks, he's not coming back. But, I mean, that obviously tells you the seriousness of the injury. Obviously, I'm not going to speculate because I don't know. I'm not his doctor. So I didn't sign a waiver, or he didn't sign a waiver for his HIPAA, none of that. So I don't know. But I think, that was something to see. Even James Franklin tweeting out earlier today, obviously, it's, I don't know who's tweeting from the James Franklin account. But, the fact that something like that was tweeted, way to come back, things like that. He tweeted, obviously, his hurdle, things like that. That is an encouraging sign for Cam Wallace. It shows, how far he's made it back. And, I mean, I think that's a big trend. I mean, you have a few guys who are coming back that we haven't seen in a while. I mean, you talk about him. You can talk about Andrew Rapplier, which, again, last year, James Franklin, that was one of his, pleasant surprise type of guys. We expected to see more and more of him. And then West Virginia game, and he was out for the season. You look at the defensive side, again, as we talked about with Zariah Fisher. Even looking at Keon Wiley in the linebacker room, Alonzo Ford, who hasn't been able to put together a full season since he's been at Penn State. I mean, the best availability is availability. I mean, the deeper you get into the playoffs, that would be very important. especially nowadays that you can play like 25 games in the season, whatever that math takes you to. You'll play a lot of games in the season. I think that'll be very important to see going forward. But I mean, I think that was definitely a very encouraging sign for Cam Wallace, and I think that he's definitely on the way of locking up that running back 3 spots, which obviously doesn't have the glitz and the glamour that the 1 and 2 or the 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call that, Nick and Katron spot. But again, that will give him the chance, get in there a little bit. I mean, if they want to run 2 backs and they need a break, go get Cam in real quick, and obviously that'll give him confidence going forward. Being in that running back room, being under Stan Drayton, obviously that'll be something very important, and that'll be something Cam Wallace will be a player that we'll definitely be watching out for, especially in these couple games that we'll see him probably a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the RB3 spot, yes, it's a wide open, kind of an open competition, but it's like, it really is just a competition to have 1 to 2 like meaningful touches in a game. But to focus on like the Penn State's like actual running game, it's like I agree with Lyle. They'll figure it out. But the only thing is, it's like I think James Franklin talked about this when they missed this block on a 3 technique and they go 3 and outs by getting the ball to start their drive in like the red zone. It's like those types of drives need to end in touchdowns. Because we've kind of seen it before with like prior games against Ohio State in recent years, where it's like they miss some opportunities and kind of leave some meat on the bone, and it's like settle for field goals instead of getting touchdowns. And it's like sometimes it's like that feels like it kind of costs them later in the game. And it's like once they get into a Big Ten schedule, it's if players like Zane Durant's going to get them the ball at the 6-yard line, they've got to score a touchdown on that drive. Like there's no excuses why the offense should not score a touchdown there.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. When you look at kind of finishing drives, I mean, it's something that, I did mention, and let's be frank, if you go to psucollegian.com, you can click football. You can scroll down a little bit. We brought in a lot of stories this week, but you'll find it, or you can just type in Let's Be Frank Avery Hill on Google. You'll find it either way. But I kind of talked about that a little bit in there, kind of talking about how Andy Kotelnicki, the pressure is really on him to kind of make that step up. I think kind of talking about finishing drives and things like that, that brought me back to the Ohio State game where they weren't able to finish the drive. Obviously, that final drive, and it was like they're running the same plays on the goal line. If you look back to Nevada Saturday, we had the 2-point conversion. I really don't know what to call it. I didn't watch it. I'm not watching it back. I'm good. Like, it kind of reminds me, the only thing I thought of immediately was that Colts punt. Like, remember that
like,
one?
what was the vision on that?
I don't know. Like, that's what it
was. It like they tried to pull a fast one because like Riley Thompson was the holder and he switched his number, so Jackson Smollett came in. That was
obviously James Franklin said like they didn't have the numbers that they wanted for it, but like that was literally one of those like Chuck Pagano calls. Like let's be honest, like there was nothing there. I'm not sure how it looked in practice. I'm very interested actually to see how it looked in practice, but like that was.
I mean, I don't know if it's worse than the 2-point attempt at the end of the Michigan game in 2023. I think Mike Yurkich called like some swinging gate.
Good pull.
Failed
good
absolutely miserably. But I mean, yeah, that was his last play he called.
Yeah,
that's his last play.
There's
call.
a reason. Yeah. That's a very important thing to talk about. I mean, again, that was the last play that he called. Andy Kotelnicki, like last year, again, he was this guy where, he has such creative play calls. He's getting guys involved. He has Tyler Warren becoming, a John Mackey Award winner. Like, you have Nick Singleton and Katron Allen making strides in the run game. You have Drew Aller obviously finally making his way into that first-round conversation that he obviously probably expected coming into it, looking at his 5-star rating and things like that. Like, he had that, but I think the biggest issue was finding that balance between getting too creative and being too vanilla because he's not trying to get creative. I think, again, we saw that with running the same play, like sending Vega in motion and running Katron Allen up the gut the first 2 times. Then the last time we're going to go with Nick Singleton. Like, it didn't matter who was in the backfield. The play wasn't going to work, especially when you playing Ohio State. You were playing Jim Knowles, who's obviously on your team this year, so maybe that's an advantage. But, I mean, if you look at Ohio State, they had Matt Patricia, obviously former Patriots defensive coordinator, and he had Texas very confused. Arch Manning did not look good whatsoever. So, I mean, obviously, you'll have probably similar issues if you're scheming up bland plays that everyone knows is coming. So, I mean, I think that'll be something very important looking forward. I mean, Andy Kotelnicki is obviously going to have to, find that balance. Penn State's going to have to find a way to finish drives, whether it's in the air, whether it's on the ground. They've got to find a way to do it because leaving points on the board, especially when it comes to those big games, when you look at playing Oregon, you look at playing Ohio State, when if Penn State's able to make their way back to the college football playoffs, it's a game of inches. And if you're able to get 7 points instead of, or even 6, you end up missing an extra point. But, getting those 7 points instead of 3, I think that's very important. I think that'll be something very key to look forward to in the future. But I kind of want to transition from that. Obviously, Penn State plays FIU on Saturday. Is there anything from that game you guys are looking forward to, either from the FIU side or from Penn State side? Anything specifically?
It should be Virginia Tech. James Franklin made that clear on Wednesday. But no, FIU is coming. They're 1-0. Big win over Bethune-Cookman. But to be honest, when I think of FIU, I think of the fact that they lost their 2 leading receivers from last season, one of them being Eric Rivers, who Penn State targeted in the portal the first time around. Yeah. He's now at Georgia Tech. I don't really know how he did week 1, but Penn State should be happy with their production they got at wide receiver this weekend. This game, they're fast, up-tempo offense. I don't really think it makes a difference because there's a significant talent gap between Penn State and the Panthers. Keon Johnson, the quarterback, preseason Conference USA Player of the Year, nicknamed Lights. Sure, Lights. It's a noon game. Lights. I said this in our staff predictions. Stay tuned. Instagram. Lights are going to be too bright symbolically because it's a different caliber of opponent. I mean, he's a good player, right? You don't get named preseason Conference USA Player of the Year for no reason. But like I said last week, that's going to be a conversation this week that we're having now and that we're going to have next week. This is an inferior non-conference team that Penn State has scheduled in the beginning of the season for a reason. It will be a blowout.
Wait. But you talk about Lights. I just want to mention it real quick. You talk about Lights, but, I mean, according to the Lyle Allenstein weather report, you can find it on psucollegian.com. Again, click football. You'll see the weather report. You'll see a lot of people in ponchos, raining, stuff like that. It's going to rain.
Bring a rain
so the
jacket.
Lights might come on.
Good point,
I'm just saying the lights might be on early. We're also in the middle of Pennsylvania. You know how things get over here. So there is a chance that the lights are on. So, we'll see what happens.
94% cloud cover per AccuWeather.
Per Lyle Allenstein, but you like to give other people credit. I like it, but we know that it's your report. We know that you looked into the sky and you kind of got that forecast. So
it's true. Yeah, well, you could talk about football if you want.
That threw me. I was about. All right. I mean, yeah, it's obviously going to be a blow-up, but that could give FIU a really good chance to get one of their best players involved in Saquon Jean-Pierre, who is their...
Sure it's not Saquon? Sure?
It's not Saquon. It's like Saquon, something like that, I hope. Yeah, but that's their starting kick returner, and he averaged 28.3 yards per return last season, which was the third best mark in FBS. And if Penn State's going to be scoring a lot of points, they're going to be kicking the ball off. So it's like if they're what's Jean-Pierre, right? So if they're going to be getting the ball to Jean-Pierre a lot, it's like he could make an impact play. Maybe early in the game he could crack off of big return, and maybe FIU scores like a touchdown early to keep it close. But otherwise, it should be a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going off of that, from Penn State's perspective, I see two focuses from this game. One, get the run game going. It's going to, again, according to Lyle Allenstein, it's going to be a rain report. Again, if you didn't hear it, psucollegian.com, click football, you can find the weather report right there. But it's going to be a rain game. It's a time to get the running game involved. Either way, you wanted to get the running game involved. I think you really want to pound it to the Panthers. Like, you really want to bring it, like, every single snap. Every single snap. You want to make sure that the Panthers really are going to, like...
Dude.
Anyways, yeah, but either way, like, if I'm Penn State, I'm expecting at least 200 yards on the ground. You can kind of look back to the Kent State game last year, and I think another focus is... special teams. Again, we have yet to see Gavin Wolsu play yet. We might not see him against this game. I mean, again, with it being a run game and the run game being a thing that probably is going to come out of today, there is a chance that they just get in some drives. They're just going to run the ball, and they don't get some yards. Guys miss assignments, cool, whatever. And he might get the chance to see him. James Franklin obviously said his A-ball is as good as ever. I am not a punt connoisseur, so every time he said that, I had no clue what it is, but I am going to look it up. I'm going to learn. I'm here to learn punting. I learned long snapping a couple weeks ago. You can stay tuned for that soon, but I don't know punting like that, so I don't know what A-ball is, but I'm assuming he can really boot it. Obviously, he's a big guy, like 6'7", 280 pounds. Obviously, I don't have numbers beside me, but every time I see Gabe, I think that he's supposed to be on the defensive line somewhere, but he's not. But he's earned that starting job. It'll be interesting to see that, and I think it'll also be interesting to see the special teams unit come together. I think last week was a really good week for the special teams unit. 4 for 4 on kicks. Not really any mishaps, in kickoffs, things like that. So, looking at last year where that was kind of a slow issue because they weren't terrible, but they didn't really make that big impact. They didn't really take over the game. This special teams is not going to win you games all the time, but they never won them any games. Special teams is never a thing. Oh, we're playing Penn State. We have to focus on our special teams because they're going to beat us here. They're going to beat us there. Outside of the Nick Singleton kick return against Maryland, after Maryland started to think they were going to win the game, there was really not much last year. So I think that'll be another thing that I'm kind of looking out for. But yeah, I think to go to our last topic, there's obviously a lot of rumors floating around right now about Penn State switching its overall sportswear apparel brand to Adidas. Guys, I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Obviously, again, there's a lot floating around, a lot of people going back and forth on Twitter on, what's going on? They signed a 10-year deal, I think Matt Fortuna said, or they're set to sign one. Other reports say, okay, they're about to they're close to voting on it, things like that. They're set to make the move. There's a lot going on. Some say that it's very premature. But, what are your guys' thoughts on it? If Penn State does switch from Nike to Adidas, do you think that's a good move? Things like that.
Yeah, I thought it was quite unexpected. I'll start there. We were on the way to our full staff meeting for the Daily Collegian Tuesday, and Brett McMurphy on 3 reported that pending Penn State's Board of Trustees approval, Adidas will be the brand for Penn State come 2026, 2027. And I think you start with the fact that Penn State's been with Nike since 1993. That's been some brand loyalty. But I think it just shows that, the sign of the times, right? It's changing. Penn State is competing with a lot of other upper echelon college programs that have signed deals with Nike. You look at Ohio State. You look at Texas. You got UNC and Michigan. Obviously, that's more like the Jumpman logo with Jordan. But, with Adidas, I think they've got a chance to become the face of that brand, right? Tennessee just inked a 10-year deal, but worth, a lot of money. And the whole thing with the switch is that there's going to be a lot of NIL backing behind it. And, with the way that between the house settlement, collectives, and everything that's going on in this ever-changing landscape of college sports, the more money, the better, right? Penn State's going to lose a significant amount of its money allocated toward retaining players after the season. And obviously this is, I'm looking at it just from the football lens, but really you look at the whole thing, it's there's a lot that can go into it, especially with these other sports. Now, I'm curious to see what it's going to be like with all this leftover apparel, if we're going to have a mass sale. But I think
85% off. Yeah, right. It's coming.
I think,
Folks, get your pockets ready.
Look, if you can get all the money you can at this stage in college sports, go for it, right? Obviously, there's backlash. Nike, I'm more of a Nike guy myself. There's obviously,
bias.
No logos on this one. Nike shoes, Nike socks. You can't see it, Nike, if you're seeing this. But, it's a move, right? We don't know when it's going to be official. Penn State Board of Trustees has a meeting set for September 11th, September 12th. Nothing on the agenda that's indicated that that's what it's going towards. Matt Fortuna, Inside Zone, like you just mentioned, Daily Collegian alum, by the way, did report it's going to be a 10-year deal. That's what it's looking like. We'll see what happens. By the time it goes into play, it's going to be next year, and it's going to whole lot of implications because of it. But I'm curious. We might have an answer in a week or so, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's another move that shows that Penn State's wanting to get with the times and maybe get rid of tradition. Obviously we saw earlier this year they named the field at Beaver Stadium. They signed a $50 million deal to get West Shore home to sponsor the field. And now it's obviously you mentioned it's they've been with Nike since the start of Nike basically, and they're now switching or seeming like they're on track to switch to Adidas. But my questions to say, I want to see like if anything like changes like with the uniform, but it's like I think I would be very surprised if Penn State decided to like switch from their current uniforms, because obviously they're like some of the most iconic uniforms in all of college football, because it's just the plain, obviously just white, basic blues, like all that stuff, but yeah, it's like it's a move to get more money, and I completely understand Penn State for wanting to make the switch.
I feel like all you got to do is slap the logo on instead of Nike, make it Adidas, right? Like I think that'd make Penn State fans
It could
happy.
be, but I mean, I also do think I think the first thing that I thought of is, will Penn State change their uniforms? If you look at some of the best uniforms in the game, I would say is FIU. I don't know if they call it the Vice uniforms, but the Miami Heat Vice, they're hard. Like, I think they're one of the best in the game. I think that Adidas does, I feel like Adidas, as a brand, you're like, why do I have 3 stripes on my, if this is 3, I don't even know. I don't know what it is. 3 stripes. There we go. 3, not 2. 3, not 2. If you're wearing 2, I'm sorry. It's, probably got it from a thrift store.
Yeah.
Got it from thrift store. I mean, I've been there. It's okay. I get it. But either way, I mean, I think that does open up the possibility. I mean, you see this all over sports. I mean, you can look at, the NBA when they went from, what were they, Adidas to Nike, and they had the different uniforms. They had the Christmas uniforms, which I think they need to bring back the, OG Christmas uniforms, but now you have the city uniforms and the whatever you call them now, the rivalry ones in the NFL. There's so many different opportunities when you do change a brand. So I think that'll be something that's the biggest thing for me to look out for. In terms of tradition, Penn State fans are just going to have to deal with it. Let's be honest. Again, you talk about the relationship, obviously, it didn't start in 1993, but officially in 1993. But obviously, Joe Paterno, Phil Knight, go way back, way before that. I mean, when Nike was not even Nike. When Nike was that's not the first thing you're going to. I'm picking up, my Chucks, I'm picking up, I wasn't there, Jordans weren't there at the time, but, things like that. You're not picking up Nikes. That's not the first thing that you're doing. Nike has came a long way, but at some point, things have to end. I mean, I think that's what's really just going to happen here. I mean, I think even hearing James Franklin talk about it, it definitely seemed like things were on the way to changing. I think that'll be something definitely to look out for in the future years. But, I mean, I think from Penn State's perspective, if I were to assume, why they do it, it's obviously the money. It's obviously the chance to be able to retain and bring in more talent. There's going to be a lot of turnover next year, and if Adidas is lining the pocket a little more than Nike, then, I mean, Nike, sorry, you got to go. Got to go. I mean, in this sport, Penn State, in sports, you have to be a gold digger. You have to get the money. I mean, if you really want to, really retain a team, that's just what you have to do. So,
and I really find it kind of funny, even if it wasn't on purpose, that James Franklin came to his Wednesday presser with a towel that covered the Nike logo on his sweatshirt. So I don't know. It definitely doesn't mean anything, but it's just kind of a funny coincidence.
And I use that anecdote for my lead in my notebook from practice Wednesday, which you guys could all go check out at psucollegian.com.
Yep, as I said, psucollegian.com. You can click football, and you'll see the story. You'll see the towel right over the logo, and, I mean, that's all you need to know. Well, that's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Again, you can head to psucollegian.com. It'll be in the upper left-hand corner. You click newsletter, click football newsletter. There, you can get content curated to your inbox twice a week. But other than that, again, visit psucollegian.com and follow us on socials. We will see you next time.